Hey guys, welcome to book review 109, I believe. Today I will be reviewing Last Night I Dreamed of Peace, the diary of Dang Thuy Tram. So yeah, it's obviously her diary. Um, Now this is, I guess, in a way a travel book, but what it really is it's a personal diary of a woman that was I don't know if you call her a field medic, but was a forward medical based medic in South Vietnam fighting for the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese against American occupiers during the American War. Um, and it's not really like from a top down perspective. You know a little bit, particularly because some of the footnotes that are throughout, kind of some of the interesting areas of the region. She was in the second ward. It's essentially the area that is not near the DMZ, but around like Thuy, I believe. Well, in any case, should have written some notes. The sense that you really get is one of not of hope. There's certainly hope that the Americans will leave. There's certainly a willpower involved. Um, there's certainly it wouldn't even be questioned in her mind whether who's right and who's wrong. And mostly it wouldn't be questioned who's going to win the war. It's just how much pain and suffering can South Vietnam and the Vietnamese, or South Vietnam, geez, can the North Vietnam and the Vietnamese, um, North Vietnamese government and the Viet Cong go through before they kick out the American occupiers and replace the South Vietnamese government with a unified government between the South and the North. Again, not really kind of talking about the larger aspects. Like, it's not a field strategy book. It's really sort of like the personal feelings of Dang Thuy Tram. There are a number of people throughout the book that are her friends that she meets. Most of them pass away before she does. It should be mentioned that she was actually killed, I believe it was July of 1970, I think. And this book was not famous at all while she was alive. Matter of fact, the diary was just found on her person as she passed away, and she didn't pass away of natural causes. She was shot by American GIs. Um, but anyway, this isn't in the book itself, but it's kind of in the preface that it was found by an American GI that was like an intelligence person that kind of read the personal stuff of everybody and had translators and stuff. And just kind of against protocol almost, he decided to keep this diary because he found it so intriguing. And eventually, 25 years later, went back to North Vietnam, found the government, and with her permission, published the diary in North. Her family kind of combined, published the diary in North Vietnam. Went on to be a huge hit, and then was translated into other languages, including English, and became a bestseller around the world. Though I think it was the #1 bestseller in Vietnam, like a runaway success in Vietnam. Back to the book itself, though. Yeah, it's she's kind of up in the mountains, and I get almost the sense that the sort of bamboo, it's not really a shack, but kind of like the bamboo house that they use, is very makeshift. They basically have like penicillin and very basic localized anesthetic to use. Most operations are not under general anesthesia, even though you're dealing with things like, you know, cutting people's legs off, I should say amputating people's legs, or different, you know, organ surgeries. Yeah, and it kind of focuses in between kind of her day-to-day life, but also kind of, daydreams is kind of a negative word, but it's really sort of her daydreams about the North, she ruminates a lot about how much she loves the North. Now, that's not in contrast to what she sees in the South. It's just that the North is her home. She's from Hanoi. And she's fighting, obviously, because she believes in what she thinks, that the Vietnam should be a unified people. But there's just a lot of kind of in these very testing, trying, and ultimately paying the ultimate price, the ultimate test. In these very trying times, she daydreams of her childhood and her family. There's a officer named M that's the love of her life, if you want to call it that, that she corresponds with kind of infrequently. She joined the movement largely, he's older than she is. She joined the movement, moved down in 68, like late 68, like, I think like November 68, largely because he had joined the Viet Cong resistance a couple years earlier, and she wanted to show that she was just as heroic as he was. As for the names, man, I keep doing this backwards. As for the names, there's some generals and some stuff. I don't know. This is gonna sound so bad, but I'm just not real acquainted with Vietnamese names, so you know, I guess I kind of just have to go by their descriptions. You know, there's the fellow nurses that she works with. I think she's the only actual doctor and does all the operations at this clinic. Doctors for the Viet Cong being not only short on supplies, but there was just a shortage of doctors. Now, she does have a number of nurses. And sort of at the first half of the book, they're kind of able to stay in one spot, even though they're under semi-constant threat. But at one point, the clinic actually gets attacked, and they have to move everybody, and she almost gets killed. And it becomes even more harrowing because the U.S. had, I believe, 69 to 70, had really stepped up a lot of surveillance. No longer really just attacking kind of in the field, but looking and recognizing how successful it had been. Cutting off the supply line from the Ho Chi Minh Trail, cutting off the backward in the sense that behind where the action was happening down in the fields. Something about Vietnam, the geography of Vietnam is the coastline is all rice-growing region, and if you're a guerrilla fighter, which is obviously what Vietnam had to do during this war, you can fight down there, but you can't consistently fight down there. You have to have some place to retreat to, and that's largely either civilians going into homes, but for larger things like medical, obviously it's hard to convince somebody you're not a soldier if you have your foot blown off or something like that. You have to retreat into the mountains, which the United States was eventually able to attack and move into for a time successfully. Of course, they lost the war. But that's where Thuy, I can't believe I forgot that name. That's where she kind of had her field of operation. So they had to move around the field hospital quite a bit in the later half of the book. Kind of the noose slowly constricting around the neck to the point where towards the end of the book, they actually had to do another evacuation where she was just left with a number of nurses. I think there were like 2 other nurses that stayed with her, but all the other nurses and all of the other patients that could move were moved. But 2 nurses and her were kind of like stranded in one spot because they were taking care of a handful of soldiers that could not move, that were in ambulatory, I guess you'd say. And it makes it sound kind of the time that her writing ended, that she didn't get any support in people coming back with stretchers and to be able to move these people. But it turned out that she was able to move, and they were able to move the soldiers, but it was just in that retreating effort along one of the paths, she came along a group of soldiers and was killed, while a couple of other of her comrades were able to escape. I was like I'll read the last part of the book because it's just, it's very inspiring. You have to remember that this is a woman that largely just wrote this for herself. She didn't write it with any intent of this becoming famous. Is it? No, I am no longer a child. I have grown up. I have passed trials of peril, but somehow at this moment, I yearn deeply for my mother's caring hand. Even the hand of a dear one or that of an acquaintance would be enough. Come to me, squeeze my hand, know my loneliness, give me love, the strength to prevail on the perilous road before me. And that was the end of her diary. She died shortly thereafter. Whether you're, well, we won't go into the larger political realm. I mean, I'm sure there's some people that think if people see this review and they see that it's written by a communist medic, that they won't be sympathetic. But you really realize whether it was wrongly or rightly on a larger sort of philosophical angle, how dedicated these people were, how much they saw Americans not as differing philosophy, but as colonizers, as imperialists, and how much they wanted independence. And it's really harrowing, the story. It's really quite a harrowing story. So anyway, maybe I didn't quite do it justice, but I guess that's it. Last night I dreamed of peace. Quick shout out to Andrew X. Pham. He complained in his introduction that nobody gives credit to translators. This was a well-translated book. He did Catfish and Mandela. So yeah, it was good. Check out some more of my reviews, you guys.